come to the big story globally, really, and that we have, at least here on ET Now, been keeping our eye on. Just to reiterate that we've been bringing you the facts of what is happening with the AstraZeneca vaccine. We've been pointing out that several countries which are part of the European Union have decided to suspend the use of the vaccine after concerns of blood clots. There are just 37 cases of clotting that have been reported, and more than 1 million, nearly 2 million people have taken the AstraZeneca vaccine in Europe. Out of them, 37 have reported clotting. As a result, as a precaution, several nations over the period of the last 48 hours decided to suspend the use of the vaccine. The European Union's medical body, chief medical body today put out a statement and had a press conference explaining what they were doing about it. So they have an expert committee looking at all the data possible and will bring a conclusive point of view on whether there is a cause and effect relationship, whether the vaccines are in effect causing these cases of clotting or whether it's just a coincidence. This information is expected to be out this Thursday. Let's listen in to that statement coming in from the EMA.
Last week, our safety committee, the Pharmacovigilance and Risk Assessment Committee, did review the preliminary results on the events of blood clots in people who had received the Astrazeneca Covid-19 vaccine. We said very clearly that the benefit risk remains positive. We have continued to evaluate, we have continued to receive additional possible side events. We have pulled in experts from across the network, experts with specific expertise in coagulation and thromboembolic disorders. So it's an ongoing process. So I'm not here to give you the outcome of any scientific review. But at present, there is no indication that vaccination has caused these conditions. They have not come up in the clinical trials, and they're not listed as known or expected side events with this vaccine. In clinical trials, both the vaccinated people and the people who received the placebo have shown some very small numbers of blood clot developments. The number of thromboembolic events overall in the vaccinated people seems not to be higher than that seen in the general population.
All right, let's go across to Dr. Faheem Younus. He's the Chief Infectious Diseases at the University of Maryland, and he's joining us now to speak on this. Dr. Younus, great to have you on the show. Dr. Younus is one of the foremost experts on infectious diseases, and we've been speaking to him often through the COVID-19 pandemic to make sense of what's happening. So the latest today, of course, Dr. Younus, as you very well know, are concerns over the AstraZeneca vaccine because there have been some reported incidents of clotting after the vaccination was taken. The EMA today says they are trying to establish whether there's a cause and effect relationship here. Do you think that these concerns are valid?
I don't think they're valid. I believe AstraZeneca is a safe vaccine, and what we are seeing is correlation and not causation. This was foreseeable. I said it 2 months ago or 3 months ago, before we were rolling out the vaccines, that there are baseline statistics. If you give a vaccine to 10 million people, 4,000 of them will get a heart attack in the following 2 months. 4,000 of them will have a stroke. 14,000 will die in the following 2 months. That's not because of the vaccine. Those are baseline statistics. That's how many heart attacks are happening 2 months anyway, regardless. So I've been talking about it, that this is all correlation and not causation. You cannot link two things together only because they happen at the same time.
You know, having said that, Dr. Younus, the fact is that several nations have suspended the use of this vaccine, and that's where the concern stems from. Surely they also have very wise medical experts on their board. So why have they done that then?
That's a great question. I think it should be answered by those nations, frankly speaking. I don't know what they're thinking. I do pick on two key things. One, they're talking about a 2-week suspension because they want to talk about it, think about it, and they want to do more analysis. So number one, there's a good chance after 2 weeks, many of these nations will get back on. Remember, during the AstraZeneca trial, when we had one person who had neurological side effects and it made world headlines, everyone was talking about it. This vaccine is going to crash. This vaccine is bad. That is normal process. So to me, it reassures me actually when only 37 cases of blood clots make world headlines. That shows me the process is working. This vaccine is under such scrutiny that nobody's trying to shove anything under the rug. It's transparent. And I think that's how we need to approach it. As to why these countries are suspending, honestly, I don't know. I think that's something that they should answer.
You know, the question is that is there enough clarity for people around the world? Now, here you have a bunch of countries that have suspended the vaccine. You have another set of countries that are continuing to administer the vaccine. One of them, of course, is India, where the Covishield is based on AstraZeneca as one of the most widely used vaccines. It's the same case in the UK, the US as well. Do you think there is a need for clear communication from these governments?
Sure. I mean, good communications throughout this pandemic has helped. There are 65 countries that are using AstraZeneca. So if 5 or 6 or 7 of them have suspended it, we need to look at it from that perspective. Your earlier point about those countries must have their experts, I agree with that. But if you go by that logic, World Health Organization, which to me is the overseeing body, has said that AstraZeneca is safe. So I would say that that logic would trump the experts in Denmark or Ireland or Netherlands. So I personally, once again, feel the vaccine is safe and we have to compare one risk with another. This is not a binary. It's not like you're stopping vaccine, now you're safe. No, you're taking the risk of COVID. And COVID has killed millions of people. So I think what people don't understand is not doing something is not safe. You're just exchanging one risk with another and likely exchanging a much, much small, minuscule risk with a massive, huge community-based risk.
You know, now that we have vaccines that work, we have a fair number of candidates of vaccines that work, now that several countries have started vaccinating aggressively in large populations. Dr. Younus, do we have clarity on a timeline now? I know I've asked you this question quite a few times in the year gone by, but can we see the end in sight?
Absolutely. I think this is absolutely the end is in sight. We've come a long way and we can see the finish line. The important thing to remember here is a marathon runner that has ran 20 miles does not stop running only because he's now seeing the finish line. He keeps going. I think we didn't come this far to lose. It is a massive international mobilization. And at this stage, the end game is linked with vaccine. 2 months ago, I was also a little ambivalent. I wanted to see a lot of data before I could say this, what I'm about to say. I think now we have seen enough safety data for every vaccine. I don't have to name the 6 or 7 vaccines around the world. I know there's a lot of vaccine nationalism and people's feelings are very sensitive around it, but to me, all of them are equally safe. Their efficacy could vary a little bit. So people should get whichever vaccine is available to you, whichever vaccine your government is saying you take it, because that's how we're going to get to the end game. There's no point discussing the variants. We cannot do anything about it, right? An average person has no control over variants. An average person has control over whether they can get the shot or not. We need to get to 60, 70, 80% community coverage with this vaccine. That's a long way. And this is why I strongly reject these discussions about AstraZeneca that's happening in many Western media, because they're going to create doubts about vaccine. And it's going to slow down that vaccine adoption. It's going to push the pandemic end further away. And further it goes away, the more chance of new variants or some other X factor, really spoiling your party.
address with you, Dr. Younus, is vaccine nationalism and the forms that it's taking currently. For example, you have China saying that they will issue visas to people to come to China only if they've been vaccinated with the Chinese vaccine. As a health expert, what do you make of this tendency among many nations around the world?
Yeah, again, and I see it in two ways. I think I can see why China, Russia, India, countries will be very proud of their vaccine. That's good. We should be proud. I just don't see it helpful when we take it too far. I think at the end of the day, our fight is not with each other. We have to remember that. Our fight is with the virus. And the virus will win the more we get into the minutia of this pride. There are 100 different opportunities. I think these countries have 100 things to be very, very proud of. But let's not go at each other. Let's not just, premeditated shots that we sometimes take. Vaccine nationalism is something that WHO, it's not my word or my term. The World Health Organization came out with this very early in the pandemic because they knew this would happen. And it's just one example. I say anything that divides us. I've said it 100 times. This virus does not care. You're Chinese, Pakistani, Indian, American, Gora, Kala. The virus has no problem with that. The virus only asks one question. Are you human? And by now, the virus has demonstrated that that's all it cares about. I think the more we understand that one global piece, the better we will be. And there is a long game. If you don't get it, this pandemic may end in certain countries and may continue to rage on in others. So little by little, just like you saw Taiwan and you saw New Zealand, other countries will be COVID-free, who will understand that lesson. And those who don't, they'll continue to burn slowly, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Younus, for speaking with us here on ET Now. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. No valid concerns over AstraZeneca is what Dr. Younus is saying. He's saying it's expected that when you vaccinate a large population, these instances will crop up. There's no data yet to show that there is a direct link between the two as far as the AstraZeneca is concerned. The EMA will have its clarity and its report on Thursday. So